David Fincher back. You know who is back? We are, baby.
We are.
First time doing back-to-back episodes in a long time.
Literally back to back.
Literally back to
Not
back.
even waiting.
Yeah, we swapped clothes, kicked out Connor. No, I'm just kidding. But it is kind of funny to do this in a while. But we did it for a good reason, because our boy, the guy, our boy,
He's for us.
he's for us. I feel like he makes movies purely just for us. David Fincher, a director that we, I think,
Literally purposely watched every single one of
Yes.
his movies just to talk about
I think
it.
previously we were both like kind of
Mild fans.
Yeah, and then we came away watching his entire filmography like, oh my god, he's the greatest of
Massive
all
fans.
time. At least that's how I felt. And it's funny because just like a preamble on Fincher, I feel like he is the most well-known director who people don't know his name. Like, if you say, oh, David Fincher made that movie, they're like, who? You're like, you ever seen Social Network? You're like, oh, yeah, that guy. And then you're like, Gone Girl and Seven. They're like, oh, he made those movies too? And then everything starts to click where it's like, oh, he has made these, like, his run of movies have had the central theme.
Dark lighting.
Yeah, which is how I feel this movie is going to be perceived in the same way, where people are going to watch it and be like, that's okay. And then you're like, yeah, it is also made by, quite literally one of the most important directors of the
Yeah.
2000s, sorry. People are going to be like, oh.
End of the 90s.
Yeah, end of the 90s.
End
Yeah,
of the 2010s.
Yeah.
That being said,
The 21st century.
yes. Surprisingly divisive film, The Killer.
Were you reading a lot of stuff online as well?
I didn't watch a single trailer for it because
No, neither did I.
I knew I wanted to watch it, so I didn't want to know anything going into it. But I couldn't help but see reactions online and reviews, and I got a sense that people either thought it was just another one of the books for David Fincher,
Yeah.
or Netflix just schlock
Yeah.
of some kind. Boring, unfunny, uninteresting. Boring was the biggest critique I heard out of everything.
Yeah.
That was the main criticism that I saw before I even watched this film. That's what a lot of people were saying. On the other hand, people were just saying, yeah, it's David Fincher. If you like his movies, you'll like this one. So don't have any expectations beyond that. And going into this movie,
I feel like you're a part of the former category. We've been doing this a long time, and I can tell where your reviews are going.
the first 10 minutes are Michael Fassbender in one room that we don't leave with voiceover narration. That is
It's like a play.
only action. And I was like, 10 minutes in this room? That's risky to start a movie that way.
Only one man could do it.
Well, it's the first 10 minutes of a film that I was surprised was only an hour and like 40 minutes.
I think so.
This was a short movie.
Hour 50, yeah.
When I think of David Fincher, I think like
3.5 hours
3.5
Zodiac.
hours Zodiac. Or
2:45 Social Network.
yeah, or like 5 hour long Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Yeah. Gee, if that movie for like 15 hours. Jeez Louise.
So sure enough, about 10 minutes in this movie, I was like, this is either going to leave this room or it's going to stay in this room for the rest of this
He
movie.
pulls a Steve McQueen. Is it Steve McQueen?
Thankfully, it leaves the room. In my opinion, I thought this movie was totally fine.
Yeah.
I didn't find it boring
No.
other than those first 10 minutes, actually.
I disagree with the first 10 minutes. I actually
Oh, yeah?
really like the first 10 minutes because it leads into one of the funniest, wackiest plot twists.
Yeah.
That I think kind of sets up like the whole theme of
The
the
actual
movie.
plot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not well, also the plot, but just like a
His
whole-
character arc.
Yeah, more or less. That being said, I went into this just hoping it wasn't Mank or Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
I liked Mank. Well, then again, never mind.
That makes one of us. And I was happy that it wasn't. I think it's. I don't want to say peak Fincher because I think we at his peak we know what he does and he does it so well. But it is vintage, like Michael Jordan dropping 35 points for the Washington Wizards.
For the non-basketball fans, I would say this is closer to Panic Room or even Gone Girl, in my opinion.
Well, I was saying in the film, like he's definitely past.
You think he's past his prime?
Era.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's past his prime because I don't know if a filmmaker ever has like a prime
Yeah.
to say. You can always reinvent yourself, but I think in terms of like his style of movie being so like provocative and groundbreaking, right? Because movies like Zodiac, Social Network, even like Gone Girl in the later or mid 2010s, it was like, whoa, these are so psychological. We're not used to seeing this on the big screen, at least to the extent that he goes. But I think like in terms of that style of filmmaking, I think it's nothing new, but David Fincher's worse is still like better than 90% of
those people's.
Because as much as I don't like Mank or Curious Case of Benjamin Button, I mean, we went back and when we did that whole pod series, like there are good moments in those movies where I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, or that's neat, or only he could do something like that. And even something like Panic Room, which is super simplistic and basic. It's like, I'm going to put a camera underneath a door. I'm going to saw like a doorway in half with the camera so that way we can see the two sides and cool stuff like that. And I think he does that in this movie very flavorfully and tastefully. That kind of keeps you engrossed for what is, I mean, like, let's be honest, a very, very basic plot.
Yeah.
More or less.
During our discussion with Connor on video game movies, I had made the argument that it's one thing to aim for just being entertainment, but you should still aim for being artistic about it, having some craft and cohesion of story, character, on-screen talent, and behind-the-camera talent. And I think no matter what the story is, David Fincher succeeds because he always has the latter. Yeah. He always has the cohesion of story, talent. Both he never writes his own scripts. He's always bringing up other projects. All the actors he's worked with, most people he's worked with before, and there's a whole slew of actors I have never recognized before in this movie, but they all did fantastic. Yeah. Anyway. That's just where I think David Fincher succeeds the most. And so part of the reason why it kind of feels like, oh, I didn't know David Fincher directed that, is because he's actually somewhat versatile in terms of, the stories themselves or the genres of the film. He just keeps that one thing consistent so frequently. And so in my opinion, that was really to the benefit of The Killer.
Yeah.
Because the story is so, I almost want to say one note, like it progresses at the pace of Michael Fassbender's emotions in this movie.
Yes. You're telling me you didn't like him having the same face?
It's very
for 2
deadpan.
hours.
And the actual arc is deadpan, but there's no filler. Except for arguably the first 10 minutes of this film. Yeah. There's no filler. The editing is constantly keeping you on your toes. The acting from everybody, even the minor characters and actors who as far as I'm aware, are either new or have not been in many projects. It's all there, in my opinion. I think part of the reason why this is so divisive is because it's so simple and deadpan and boring. And David Fincher's name carrying such weight to it, anything he does is going to be scrutinized. Yeah. And we're at a point where post-Marvel, people are, more adamant about scrutinizing movies than ever, where it feels like David Fincher making these Netflix movies, I feel like people are worried that he's going to slide into that business model of just churning out content and not movies.
Nah, I think he's.
But obviously, it's understandable
I see
why
what you're
people
saying, though.
would
Yeah,
think that, or they're approaching this movie from that perspective to begin with.
Yeah, yeah.
This is David Fincher, the guy who...
He's selling out.
Yeah, selling
way,
out,
yeah.
in a way. I mean, you can't make Fight Club and then sell out to Netflix. What are you doing, my guy? But everything is there, from the story, which, as deadpan as it is, I love crime stories.
Yeah,
I love
it's
detective
good.
stories, action thrillers. This is fantastic.
It's
in my
very
opinion.
tense. Yeah. Because there was a moment watching this where I was like, this isn't really that like tense of a thriller. Because I think you could categorize it as a thriller to a degree.
Yeah. Wikipedia does, so that's what I said.
I took myself out of it. And I was like, this isn't really that thrilling, but what he does using sound, the camera, the editing. I mean, sound editing. I'll tell you right now, if it's not nominated at the Oscars, like, what is even the point of the category?
They just hate '90s music.
I guess that's what it is. But like the use of those three instruments in his, and I mean,
his
he's one of the
arsenal.
most technically sound director when it comes to blocking characters and using the camera as an instrument to show or not show like action that's gonna happen.
Yeah, dude. When you have a fight scene that is entirely in darkness, in silhouette.
Yeah.
But it still has the clarity of like a John Wick movie. You know,
Such a good. We'll get to that in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But oh my god,
but
I had to stand up. I was lying down and I stood up because I was like, oh my god, this is amazing.
yeah, you know what's fun? Oh yeah, we'll get to that. Anyway, going back to my original point. I think the reason why I found this movie so engaging was because so many people said this is a boring movie.
Yeah.
That I was like, I am like intently watching this now because it's either going to bore me or it's not.
I wasn't bored at all.
Yeah, I mean, once you left the room at the beginning. All right.
But like he said, man, if you're bored, this job isn't for you. So you can never be a hitman.
Yeah.
Because those first 10 minutes, I mean, that's like 3 days for him.
Yeah. Separates the men from the boys from the men right there.
But it is interesting that you point that his name is what carries the divisiveness with it, because it does feel like this movie, if you were a film snob, film bro, and you were like, David Fincher or die, you probably don't like this movie.
Yeah.
But if you are casually browsing on Netflix and are like, oh, it says like, oh, if you like Seven, you might like this movie, and you watch and you're like, oh, that's pretty good.
I like this
especially
movie.
considering,
The same writer.
that, and also Netflix is not known for its quality product, and I would put this immediately in like the top 3 Netflix movies.
Yeah. Especially because most of the quality things on Netflix were already David Fincher to begin with, between House of Cards and Manhunter.
Yeah.
So not really breaking new ground there anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Spoiler-free review.
yeah, I
in my
really
opinion.
enjoyed this movie.
I would say that this is a solid
Just
A.
a very technically sound, fun.
Absolutely.
It's funny, surprisingly, at times. I don't know if you felt that way, but there were definitely times where like the ending of that first 10 minutes, I definitely cackled a little bit. And then the fight scene, there's a couple props that are grabbed where I'm like, that's pretty interesting. And then when he's doing the last like break in and he's buying stuff, the way he goes about buying stuff got a good chuckle out of me.
But
But he does that though, because he does that a lot in Fight Club, where the characters, as dark and gritty as the story is,
they still have humor to them.
there's still like funny parts where Brad Pitt's wearing a fur coat for no reason.
I feel like people who are saying this movie is supposed to be a parody of like these kind of action movies,
No, I don't feel that
I think
at all.
are overplaying the humor in this movie.
Yeah. This isn't Deadpool.
Yeah.
It's just,
I didn't feel that.
it's funny because it's his way
At
of
all.
saying F you to these corporations, right? Which is what he's known for,
Yeah.
more or less, throughout his career. That's what I find it funny.
Oh, Dennis Johnson. So
Dennis
we both
Johnson
give this a
didn't-
solid A.
Dennis Johnson didn't like that take.
My apologies.
Yeah, I'd give it like an A.
Solid A. I mean, it's on Netflix.
Would recommend.
Just watch it if you have
would
Netflix.
watch it again.
Yeah. This is a good
Especially
one.
because it's a clean 2 hours.
I think, too, in the scope of David Fincher's career, he definitely has the standout movies that everyone watches: Fight
Yeah.
Club, Social Network,
Seven.
Zodiac, Seven.
Gone Girl.
Some of his the Killer would definitely rank among the others.
But I
among
put it
that.
at the top of that list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I
I
would
would
put
say
it
so.
above. I mean, we can go through this one more time real quick. Alien 3 and Benjamin Button are like bottom of the pile.
You know,
I think I gave both of those like D's or yeah, I think I did give them both D's.
I forgot to mention this when I made my original argument, so sorry if I'm repeating myself here. But another reason why I think that this movie is pretty divisive is because to a certain extent, I think people don't really understand David Fincher that much anyway. Like, not to say that you have to understand the director to understand a movie, but when I feel like part of the reaction to this film is coming from people's association with his name, he has gone on record saying that he doesn't always aim to make like a culture defining breaking film. Sometimes he just reads a script and it's good. Panic Room, Benjamin Button, it's like
The Game.
I completely forgot about the game, but that would be right
that
there.
just hit me right now.
Yeah.
And that was really good. I remember
really
coming
good
away
movie.
from The Game being like, oh, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah, but it's another example of he is in a weird way, and you can even throw Mank in that category too. I'm sure for some people.
Yeah, I would.
You know, some directors, and I've heard people like Quentin Tarantino talk about this before, where like there feels like a pressure in the modern era of filmmaking to have like a perfect filmography, where every movie is just supposed to be a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. People like David Fincher have directly gone against that and said, no, sometimes I just want to make a good movie, irregardless of what I think its cultural impact is going to be at the end of the day. And when he does that with a movie like The Killer, it feels like, you know, when all the David Fincher fans are like, why would he make something like this? It's like, my brother in Christ. Well, this is what you signed up for.
The thing is, PTA is the same exact way, except PTA's movies are lighthearted and fun.
Yeah.
And, you know, I hate to say it, but like hipster, whereas Fincher movies are more, so, I mean, those type of PTA movies attract like a different audience, whereas Fincher movies attract, you know, like the edgelords.
Yeah. Us.
So when he goes and makes like Benjamin Button, it's kind of like, what are you doing
here, my guy?
What are you doing?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's fair because Mank, I mean, he is very open about like, this is my love letter to my dad.
Yeah.
Because I think his dad was a screenwriter who passed away, and he's like, I just wanted to make something in memory of him. And I think, I mean, I don't know why we always have to hold directors to high pedestals. I think everybody's allowed, like, if you make two bad movies in a row, I think is when we start to call your name.
Yeah.
To be like, all right, we're a little worried here. But I mean, like, Greta Gerwig and Jordan Peele, two of the directors we're most excited to see. They both made crappy third movies, in our opinion, at least.
Yeah. And we've also
And we're not like, oh, they're trash. We're just like, we'll see what the next one happens.
We also just came off the heels of reviewing Killers of the Flower Moon from the director who has had probably the most up and down career.
It was basically from like 82 to 94 was just not, he was just not in the culture.
So to end off the spoiler-free parts, don't trust anything you read on TikTok or Reddit about film studies or film criticism. Watch movies on your own and form your own opinion. Yeah. And The Killer's on Netflix, so I'd recommend you watch it.
I also feel, just quick, is there like a movie that he has made that is like everybody loves other than The Social Network?
I was going to say not even The Social Network.
Because I mean, even if you go on IMDb, it's like Gone Girl, which we both really like. I think it's like a 6.8 starred and like a 70 something Metacritic. And it's like, I feel like that's just who he is as a director. It's part of taking the context of reviews and being like, you know, when we were like, oh, Saw 10 got a 70 on Rotten Tomato. This is going to be the greatest movie of all time. I feel like that's part of it with Fincher, where it's like, if he gets a 7.4, you're like, oh, this is high art.
You know what's funny is I actually think David Fincher's music videos have more like mainstream appeal
Probably.
than his movies
Probably.
do, and fewer people could even identify any of the music videos he's
Probably.
ever directed. But I think that that's probably the case.
That's funny.
I don't know.
Anyways,
If
so
you've
that's it
ever-
for our spoiler free. We would both
Spoiler-free.
highly recommend. Both give us both solid A tier movies for us. It's been a good year for movies. I'm so excited for our end of 2023 pod. I'm so excited.
Oh, I have a massive list running
Yeah,
right now.
I've been tracking because I've been watching movies outside of the pod too that I want to talk about.
Same.
And yeah, it's been a really good year for movies.
All right.
So, anyways, that's our spoiler free. We're gonna move into spoilers now. So if you haven't seen it, or if you did just see it, and you're joining us, welcome back.
Welcome back.
Glad to have you back.
So this movie was kind of boring, right? No, I'm just joking.
The 10 minutes were amazing.
What do you think about the voiceover?
I didn't mind it.
I absolutely minded it.
I didn't mind it. I mean, it's a thing he uses sporadically in his movies.
Benjamin Button.
Benjamin Button, most famously or infamously, I guess, depending on
Everything about that movie
your
is
perspective. But even in something like Fight Club,
Yeah.
uses it a little bit in Fight Club, I think. You know, was it the best monologue or the best inner dialogue that could have ever been written? No. But it's used as an instrument and kind of like showing Fassbender reasserting himself as like, I need to be clinical, I need to be perfect, you know, here are my rules, and then immediately breaking those
Breaking
rules
them.
as soon as shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
Is always it was an interesting thing, and I think it just kind of cemented the theme of like nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
So stop trying to, you know, make yourself perfect.
You know, for David Fincher himself, a lot of the appeal of his movies is the fact that he's extremely meticulous and detail oriented.
Yes.
Like you had mentioned his blocking, the method that he uses for shooting multiple takes, but then choosing blocking actors in such a way where he can choose one half of the screen as one take and the other half is a completely different take. Like that level of detail in the film, I feel like, you know, and I have to say I was probably doing this myself as a David Fincher fan. I'm kind of scanning thinking, this is a guy who is so detail oriented that when he does something so obvious in a film, I'm like, does
Why?
he think I'm stupid? Like, I understand why we need all this narration and dialogue, because if we didn't have it, it would genuinely be a boring movie.
Yes.
But at the same time, could you not have just taken it out and then made a more interesting character who smiles more and has more dialogue anyway? But that being said, for the character who Michael Fassbender is in this film, the voiceover works
Yeah.
in place of anything that he could possibly say.
Because he's psychopathic.
Yeah, he's literally Ryan Gosling in like Blade Runner or Drive in this movie.
You know what's funny? I saw a Reddit comment that said, oh God, we have another That's Literally Me character.
That's funny. That's pretty funny.
all these TikTokers are going to ditch their Drive jackets for
Trench
random
coats and
like,
raincoats.
trench coats. Yeah.
Recycling hats and gear. But for me, my only complaints about this film is the voiceover and the opening. Those first 10 minutes in the room. It's one of those things where, as an introduction to the character, who we spend so much time setting him up because he basically doesn't change throughout the rest of the film.
Yeah.
Once that inciting incident happens, it's just, you know, deadpan the
There's
rest of the
no
way.
character progression.
There is no character progression. So I think having that much time in his head, learning about his mindset and his ideas and how he will have to react when something doesn't go his way
Yeah.
makes sense if you're constructing your story that way. It doesn't make sense because that's technically not conventional storytelling wisdom about how you should do it anyway, is relying on voiceover. I feel like that breaks fairly important
There's
rule.
like 3 directors that can do it.
Yeah.
And Fincher's
David Fincher is one of them. He just didn't do it for this movie.
Yeah.
So that was one of those where, for those first 10 or so minutes, I was like, and And I know it's 10 minutes because
Did you actually stop the?
I paused it to
Yeah,
like
okay.
get some water, and I was like, "We're 10 minutes into this, and we still haven't left this room. It's been day to night, today to night again."
He's gone out and walked like 4 times.
Yeah,
Pretty sure
he went to
grabbed-
McDonald's
He
and
grabbed
that
a
was
bagel. Yeah.
So everything from and that was when I was like, "All right, I'm gonna watch this closely and pay
Yeah.
attention now, because if it is the rest of the film is gonna be like this, then." It has to something has to matter about this, and sure enough, the rest of the film was just a well-made
Espionage
thriller. So I had no issue with it after that point, really. And even the sequence when he is actually about to snipe the man in the building across from him, when you're in his head at that moment, that narration is totally fine at that moment.
Yeah.
And is acceptable when you would do something like that. It's just the 9 minutes up to that point dragged a little bit.
But I think it works because we don't have time to see throughout the actual narrative. We don't have any ability to peek into his head other than him being like, don't show emotion.
Yeah.
Make sure you clean up after yourself and this and that.
There's a really good moment where
I almost bumped off Connor again.
he shoots the lawyer with the nail gun. And
The 9 Inch Nails.
The
Did you
9
catch that?
Yeah. But in his voiceover, he's like,
I loved it.
he was like 3 nails in the chest for a 50-year-old man. Should last 6 minutes, but then he dies instantly.
Yeah,
And he's
yeah.
like, well, I was wrong. No expression on his face, but because we get that in the narration, you're like, that's actually a good use of voiceover narration in that moment, in my opinion. And you know what? This is adding onto a discussion that I also saw happening online as well. People were... So I want to say this. My criticism of those first few minutes when we are introduced to his character is not that we don't know anything about him, or that, we don't know where he's from, what his name is, how he got there, why he's an assassin, what's his motivation. Nothing like that.
We don't need any of
It's
that.
an espionage thriller.
That's what I love
He's
about
a
this
spy.
movie. Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
I think we've made this many times where too many movies and too many shows are giving us too much backstory and lore. It's like, I don't need to know anything other than Lord of the Rings does it the best. They're like, all right, there was this giant war. There's this ring. These guys found the ring. They got to return it.
Yeah.
Literally, that's it. It's like, we'll figure out the rest along the way, but we have to get going now because this is a 4.5 hour movie.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's like when a movie is just like, all right, he's been holed up in this hotel for 10 minutes or for 4 days. Now he has to kill this guy. And then it goes bad. All I need to know.
Yeah.
I don't need to know, and then it's obviously revealed, the
Who he works
wife or the
for.
girlfriend,
Yeah.
and then, slowly peeled back, who he works for and stuff like that. When a movie does that, I love it.
Yeah.
Especially when it's an action movie.
It's just that no action happens in those first few minutes. But speaking of action, when he is in Florida, he breaks into that man's house.
Florida Man strikes again.
Florida Man strikes again. He breaks into his house. And there was a moment where I was like, all right, this is David Fincher.
It's got to be something.
I don't know if he does action.
Yeah.
I don't know if he does a fight scene here.
I don't think he has. Other than
Girl with the Dragon
10
Tattoo.
seconds of Fight Club.
Yeah. Fight Club, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo has some, I think.
Yeah.
And you know what? Another thing, too, a lot of handheld camera movement in this for a David Fincher movie.
I noticed that when he got to his house.
Yeah.
And it was like,
every shot was shaky cam.
dude, are you holding the camera like on a backpack? What is going on?
I'm like, this
is extremely shaky.
Yeah. This is unlike you, Fincher. Maybe that a Netflix budget ate out a steady
Literally,
camera
it was
too.
actually Fincher holding the camera.
Yeah. Something like that. They were like, it's just a slider, my guy. You just move it along. And he's like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I've never used something off a steady camera tripod.
Yeah.
But so we never learn his name. I love the running joke that he has a different identity every time he buys something. But
I love it.
that fight scene in the house in Florida was, first, it caught me off guard because I didn't expect a genuine fight scene in this movie. But the actual blocking and like choreography for that fight itself,
really impressive stuff.
Was
for someone who's not known for it.
The motion blur was a little distracting. There was a lot of motion blur.
That was peak Fincher for me. When I saw a plane landing in the Dominican Republic and it was CGI plane, I was like, oh, we're so back. We're so back.
I know exactly the play you're talking about.
Classic Fincher, just making it harder on himself for no reason.
Yeah, seriously. Just to be a little more perfect, even though we all know
it's like he couldn't have printed out a flight schedule and just been there when the plane landed.
Nah, too much work for the AD. But that, like I said, that scene like takes place entirely at night in the dark, and yet you know exactly who is who, where they are in relation to each other, and what objects they are picking up and how they're using it. That the use of silhouette in this film, it got a little tiring. About the 10th time Michael Fassbender held up a clear plastic bag and you could see the exact amount of cash and gun in it. I'm like, we get it. He keeps stuff locked up in bags. But during that fight scene, every time he like held up a bong or like a vase and you're like, and then he smashed it over the guy's head and you're like, I know exactly what's happening. Yeah. That is genuinely good directing. Like, there's no other way to describe it.
That's what happens when you have one of the most important directors of the last 30 years.
That's where all that detail orientation comes into play. As people...
I guess people are moving it? What the hell? Should we go check on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think they're just installing stuff next door. It's the maintenance guy.
I was like, I didn't order anything.
I didn't either. That was weird. Never heard that. All right.
It's like, oh, my IKEA lights came in a giant box. Jeez.
All right. Back. I'll just cut that out. No worries. All right, reset.
Fade back. Fade in. It's a good fight scene.
Yeah.
I'll end off there. That noise is going to be so distracting for the rest of this.
Especially because it sounds like it's right next
right outside the door.
Yeah.
To break in. All right.
Yeah, it's one of the most. I mean, it definitely caught me off guard, but I was like, This movie reminded me a lot of, and I hate to use this because it's such like a one-on-one comparison, but John Wick, that first one.
It reminded me of that immediately.
Where I was like, it's so simple, it's so simplistic. It's a very basic story, but like, just so much class and like solid filmmaking in every facet.
Yeah,
where it's like, why can't we just make movies like this? Like, why does everything need to be like this deep, dark, social commentary? Not that those movies can't exist or shouldn't exist, but it's like sometimes I just want to put on a movie for 2 hours and just have fun for 2 hours. It's like, why can't we make more of that? But to each their own, I guess.
Well, Fincher does it again with this one, I think.
Do you want to talk about the sound? It's your boys.
All right, the sound. Oh yeah,
specifically the soundtrack itself. I guess.
Yeah,
your two boys.
Music plays an important part of this movie. Yes. And yes, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross does the soundtrack once again, inseparable. Yep. He is to Fincher as Johnny Greenwood is to PTA. Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah.
But there was one specific moment, and it was after he feeds the dog the Dramamine or whatever he gives him.
The drugs.
Puts him to sleep. He opens the gate. The soundtrack that plays at that part was genuinely unnerving. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was because I had headphones in, but I was like, it sounds like there was a noise outside.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was about that song, but that specific moment, I was like, is this soundtrack? Is this actual like a sound
diegetic
effect
sound?
In it?
Yeah.
Like that was a super, super cool moment and effect for me in that moment. In terms of like the not score but the soundtrack, Michael Fassbender's character loves music.
Yes.
And so he's
What is it,
constantly
the
listening.
Smiths in the beginning?
Yeah, there's Smiths, there's Portish House, there's just like a bunch of like Fincher loves 90s music, I think it's safe to say at this point.
Yeah.
Up until the point where Michael Fassbender's character kind of goes like, you know what? Screw it. I actually am angry about this. I don't care about my heart rate any longer. And then he never listens to music again throughout the rest of the film.
It's a good moment.
And
He
I
takes
was
off
like,
the watch.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, I get it now. It served its purpose.
Yeah.
You know? Again, it felt a little egregious where I was like, is this movie just going to like have a soundtrack to it in every single scene or something like that? I don't know.
I think it works because a guy like him has to have these heightened senses.
Yeah.
Like there's one where he's getting I think he's by a train station and he's grabbing a rental car from I think like Hertz or something. And you can see in the background like a door opens and closes and you hear the train go by when the door is open, and then as soon as the door closes it just is silent. And I'm like, only a guy like David Fincher, who's that meticulous, would do
bother to
something
do
like
something
that.
like
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Because I mean, if you take it out, it doesn't actually do anything to it. It doesn't change the scene. But I think Fincher was just trying to trying to put us in his head where he's at in terms of like the mindset of, you know, don't trust anybody and kind of just.
There's almost like a sensory deprivation.
Yeah, you have to have like a dome of protection around you at all times.
There's definitely, I would recommend, honestly, watching this with earphones was probably the best experience because there's even a lot of just tinier sounds that both in the silence and in the soundtrack itself are just, you feel it closer, the actual effect. I think it is probably what made this movie more thrilling, in my opinion. Yeah. And less boring, for those of you who thought it was boring. So definitely, you said it would get nominated for Best Sound Design? Or
I would hope so.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Now, in my opinion, I think this should get a Best Editing nomination.
Yeah, editing is good.
There was a lot of... He does it a handful of times, but I actually like the cut where it's one static shot. Like the camera doesn't change, but the time of day changes between the cut. And he uses it where just to show a small amount of time passing. For example, when he's waiting for the dog to fall asleep, it's still nighttime, but with one cut, you know how much time has passed, even though, and temporally speaking, nothing changed. Yeah. But
even in the beginning that happens where I think he's doing like 30-minute intervals or something like that, where it's like, it's still nighttime, but like the guard moves a little bit or like a maid is doing something in the room or like something like that. That's really cool.
So just small little plays with time like that.
Is he going full Nolan?
I don't think he's going full Nolan, no.
When is this Tenet coming out?
Yeah. There was in my opinion, I had brought up the use of a handheld camera. This is probably, in terms of camera work, the least eerie David Fincher movie. There's a lot of handheld. There's a lot of static put on tripod. Very few shots where you feel like it was actually the motion control camera. There was one where he was driving. I think there was one where he was on a motorcycle in the beginning too. But outside of that, everything from this is pretty cut and dry. Nothing super like, whoa, how did they get that shot? Kind of thought that you would have in previous
No going under an elevator.
Yeah, no going through the holes in a chair or anything like that. Yeah. Nothing like that. Maybe there was and I just didn't catch it. You know,
he's too good. He's too good for us.
Yeah, it's him.
He is him.
Outside of that, that's honestly all I really have to say about this movie.
Yeah, I don't know if it wins anything. I don't know if it's nominated for anything else. Like we said, I think we both agree that it's not on the level of his top four. Which I guess, is it 4? Social Network, Zodiac, 7.
Fight Club,
Congo. Okay, so 5, top 5. I think are all in a tier of their own in terms of like the the great hits. But this is like his, what's a good Beatles record that like is not most well known, but it's still pretty good.
A Beatles record?
Yeah. You're more well-versed in the Beatles than I am.
Every Beatles record is well known.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. That's a good point. I don't know why I'm asking
No,
about.
there's absolutely like their second or third record whose title I can't even remember the name.
Yeah.
Would probably be the contender for it.
Something like that.
Any Beatles record that you can name is an iconic Beatles record.
That's a good point. Michael Fassbender, we talked about acting.
No.
It's not really. It's not.
Oh, and you mean like in terms of nominations?
No,
or
I'm
just
saying like
quality?
just in general quality.
Because in terms of nominations, absolutely not.
No, not at all.
But he plays the character well.
Unless Netflix like puts like $3 billion
behind it, yeah.
in the Hollywood
like
Foreign Press or something.
Yeah. The only other like big star actor on this film would probably be Tilda Swinton and Chris Parnell, who plays the lawyer. Outside of that, I didn't really recognize anybody else.
No. There was no Justin Timberlake, Tyler Perry role. Which is weird because like that, I feel like he was starting to do that more where he's like, let me just grab this obscure actor and do something like Rosamund Pike.
Yeah.
Even Brad Pitt, because that was like pre-blow up Brad Pitt in Seven. So there's no like actor who like
they all do good.
You feel like he like just grabbed out of obscurity and was like, I'm giving you this role.
The only actor in this film who genuinely felt like they were pulled from like genuine obscurity was the young cab driver.
Yeah.
Maybe it was his accent, the like combination, like the Spanglish kind of felt more acted, but outside of that.
Or the brother that he's in for like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
He's a little out there. Wasn't a fan of him. Nobody was offensive.
Yeah.
I'll say
Nobody
that.
was offensive.
Yeah, it wasn't like, oh my God, this is the worst acting of all time. This is not Dakota Johnson reading the lines from the Madam Web trailer acting.
Yeah.
It was just, pretty solid, pretty good.
Solid movie all around.
It's fun to see Michael Fassbender in a weird, like, stilted role.
Yeah.
Where he plays a weirdo.
You know what's funny? You had made a comment during the video game podcast about like Michael Fassbender doing a French accent. And then when it opened in Paris, I'm like, does he do a French accent throughout this film? Did you know that ahead of time?
Could you imagine? No.
Like, thank God he says nothing.
No.
He's completely silent.
Yeah, his American accent. I don't know why we still put him in American accent. Just let him speak his natural accent. Such a good voice.
Can I digress for a little while? We've already reviewed the movie. If that's all you're looking for, you're good. But quick question, culturally speaking, why do you think we like these super stoic, silent characters?
Like me and you?
I mean, why is it such a meme?
Yeah. Them therapy session mid.
Why do we like these characters, Connor?
Yeah, where's Connor when
between this guy, like you said, people are already like, oh, this is just Ryan Gosling's, drive character or whoever.
Well, I mean, to quote a wise man, American men should be like the strong, silent type, the Gary Cooper types of the world. If you know, you know. I think that really is what it is. Is like there's this kind of like, not to get all super armchair psychologist here, but there's like this innate sense of we should be like muted as men to a degree. Like that's like the cool thing to do in a way. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying like, like Humphrey Bogart smoking a cigar in 40s France is like cool. It's like, sitting there silently in a trench coat or, like going around meticulously, like lining things up on a wall. Or, I mean, like Patrick Bateman's another character, right? Where, I feel like a lot of these like weirdos on YouTube started copying him.
It's one of those things where I feel like, Michael Fassbender's character is a hired assassin.
Yeah.
And he spends the first 10 minutes talking about how he has to be detail-oriented and impersonal. And so his character is detail oriented and impersonal. But the way that people latch on to characters like that as, these weird psychological like manifestations of, or they idealize characters like that, makes no sense, in my opinion. You are not a hired assassin, so you should not be acting that way to begin with.
I'm him.
Even after I watched this movie, and then I got a message that was like, "Oh, your package has arrived." I opened the door, discreetly took it, closed the door, and I was like, "Am I Michael Fassbender in The Killer right now?"
I think that's what a lot of what it is. It's just like it looks cool to be that kind of guy, and I think
So,
for better or worse, a lot of people online
it's weird.
want to be like that.
It's weird that David,
I mean, is it weird that this is the guy who made
David Fincher has done it
Tyler
twice.
Durden? Yeah. It's not really that weird for him to do something like that.
Yeah, it's
Mark
like
Zuckerberg is another
Yeah.
example of like this loner guy. Who,
he just seems to like characters like that.
I mean, he's a very perverse guy. I think he likes characters who are a little seedy.
Knowing that quote from David Fincher, that people are perverts.
Very good quote.
Watching every David Fincher
Yes,
movie
it
now,
explains
I'm
everything
like,
about
you know
him.
what? Maybe you're right. Or I'm like, he's gonna do this, right? And then he does that, and I'm like, yeah, that's what we wanted to see.
Yeah. He's not wrong.
He's not wrong.
Yeah.
He knows his audience.
Yeah, because all of his best movies explore that theme.
Yeah.
And all of his, I would argue his most perverse movies are his most well known.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So I don't think he's wrong to a degree. I think
he backed us into a corner.
He
has us
hits
there.
the nail on the head. So they say, the 9-inch nail
The
on
9-inch
the
nail
nail.
right in the chest. Now, where does he go from here?
I mean, he's gonna stay with Netflix. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, he's on the record saying he hates studio interference. I mean, he wanted to quit after Alien 3.
Yeah.
Because I think who was it?
Fair
20th
enough.
Century Fox, I think, was just like super on him. He's just like, I just don't want to make movies ever again. I mean, he didn't. He went on like a 5-year hiatus between that and 7.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, even between Gone Girl and Mank was 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Most of that was probably spent forcing Amanda Seyfried to do 100 takes of one scene, but nevertheless.
yeah, he's an interesting guy. I don't know where he goes from here. I'd be excited to see him with I would really like to see him with an ensemble cast. I know he'll never do it because he likes to have the power, and also just because the last time he had 3 well-known actors, they all hated him at the end of it in Zodiac. So I don't know if he would ever do that. I don't think he would ever do that again, but it would be cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking about Gyllenhaal a lot, especially because I just watched Prisoners, which will be on my 2023 list.
That's a good one.
And I was like, just make up. Just come back for one more David Fincher movie. Just one more. I think I've said it 4 times already on this pod. Just do it.
That would be a... what would they make? What would they make?
I don't even care.
Zodiac 2.
They'll make one about
It's not 7, it's 8.
yeah. Yeah. Anyways,
That's it for me.
yeah, that's it
That's
for
all I
me.
gotta say.
Really good movie. Really good movie. Really fun.
Don't believe the people who say this movie is boring. Watch it yourself, and if it bores you, then believe yourself.
Yeah, I would say make it past the first
10 minutes.
When he gets on the plane to leave Paris.
Yeah.
If you're not in
by
there-
that point, you're not
If you're
in.
not in at that, I mean, it's 20 minutes in. So, But if you're not in at that point, because that's when I got in.
Yeah.
And everything started going south and he did the runaway. I was like, I like a good runaway scene.
Yeah.
And a man feeling helpless.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was cool. Anyways, that's it for us this week. Happy Thanksgiving. I think this episode will come out after Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah. Happy Thanksgiving.
So happy Thanksgiving. Happy Black Friday shopping to those who celebrate.
For those of us who have to work,
As
My
two
apologies.
members of the retail industry, we are not.
it'll be tough.
Yeah.
We'll get through it together.
Yeah. Sure.
We got this.
That's it for us. See you guys later. Goodbye.